Welcome back to CIA Declassified. Low-hanging clouds of sulfur and coal smoke press down on the spires of the Alexander plots, creating a ceiling of gray that seems to trap the very breath of the city. You are walking through the soot-stained streets of East Berlin, and the air has a weight to it. Not just the humidity of a looming storm, but the psychic pressure of 1,000 unblinking eyes. You feel a prickle on the back of your neck, not because you see a tail, but because the very architecture feels like it's watching. This is the era of the Iron Curtain, but inside the GDR, it is more like a glass cage. The Stasi has mastered the art of the invisible presence. They don't always arrest you. Sometimes they just rearrange your furniture while you're at work or leave a different brand of tea in your cupboard, just enough to make you doubt your own sanity. You pull your collar up against the biting wind whipping off the Spree River, your hand instinctively checking the microcamera concealed within your heavy wool coat. In this world, trust is a luxury that vanished with the ration cards. You are an operative within the AECAGE framework, moving through a landscape where every cafe table is a potential listening post and every concierge is a paid informant. You navigate by the quiet zones, alleys where the lack of windows provides a fleeting moment of privacy to swap a dead drop container for a roll of film. You aren't just an agent, you are a ghost flickering through a machine designed to catch shadows, living in a constant state of active awareness where a single misplaced word could send you to the basement of Hohenschönhausen. Hohenschönhausen. Every shadow in the stairwell of your tenement building feels like a physical weight, a solid manifestation of the files being compiled on your every move. You've learned to time your heartbeats to the clicking of the neighbor's rotary phone, knowing that in the house of 1,000 ears, even silence is a form of data. You are a biological infiltrator in a city that has been surgically altered to detect the unusual. Your survival depends on mastering the gray maneuver, the art of being so utterly unremarkable that the Stasi's facial recognition officers look right through you, seeing only another weary soul in the bread line, rather than the agency's most dangerous psychological asset. The damp cold of the safe house seeps through your boots as you wait for the signal, a specific flickering of a street lamp 2 blocks away. This is where the theoretical meets the visceral. You are no longer just an analyst, but a component of the structural infiltration itself. You feel the crushing claustrophobia of a society where the state attempts to occupy the space between two people's thoughts. Infiltrating the Stasi isn't about climbing walls. It's about dissolving into the atmosphere of paranoia until you can redirect the lightning of the state's anger toward its own power lines. You are the invisible rot in the beams of the ministry, waiting for the moment the entire structure realizes it has been hollowed out from within. The door to the safe house creaks with a groan that sounds like a gunshot in the stagnant silence of the hallway. Inside, the room is lit only by the orange glow of a single heating element and the rhythmic pulsing of a signal analyzer. You sit at the scarred wooden desk, peeling back the lining of a child's toy to reveal the encrypted logs of a Stasi lieutenant you've spent 18 months cultivating. This is the heart of the AECAGE operation, the meticulous, slow-motion seduction of a system that is currently devouring its own people. As the scanner begins to whir, translating German bureaucratic shorthand into Langley's actionable intel, you realize that you aren't just watching the enemy. You are becoming the very friction in the gears, the hidden hand that turns their paranoia inward until the hunters start seeing ghosts in their own mirrors. The atmosphere in the safe house is one of clinical precision, lit by the harsh glow of task lamps as you review the latest intercepts. Your task is the human dissection of the security apparatus. You are part of an elite team mapping the social and psychological vulnerabilities of an entire government. You watch as the AECAGE subroutines help you categorize the targets, identifying who can be bought, who can be broken, and who can be turned against their own masters. There is a grim satisfaction in the work. The Stasi, currently boasting about their decomposition of the populace, are totally unaware that their own internal security files are being mirrored onto CIA microdot. While they play God with the lives of their citizens, you have already mapped their own homes and their own secrets. You are the shadow behind the glass curtain, and the walls are finally starting to speak back. This is AECAGE. How did it get its name? Within the Directorate of Operations, AECAGE followed the AE Diagraph Protocol, which was the CIA's specific designation for operations involving the Soviet Union and its satellite states in Eastern Europe. The CAGE portion was a grimly appropriate descriptor for the operational goal: to trap the Stasi within its own suffocating web of bureaucracy and paranoia. It was an invention of policy, a long-term strategic directive to move from passive observation to the active structural infiltration of the East German security state. To dismantle a machine fueled by fear, we have to perform a forensic audit on the agency's most successful psychological prison break. AECAGE was a primary focus of the CIA's Berlin station. It utilized social network mapping decades before the existence of digital social media. The policy identified over 100,000 unofficial collaborators within the GDR. AECAGE utilized microtransmitters hidden inside everyday East German household items. The system tracked the emotional stability of Stasi officers to find recruitment leads. It utilized optical surveillance through custom-built pinhole cameras in hotel walls. The program identified the odor bank used by the Stasi to track dissidents with dogs. AECAGE utilized cryptographic decryption to read Stasi internal telex communications. The system mapped the pheromone traces left by targets on secret documents. It utilized pattern analysis to predict when a citizen was being targeted. AECAGE was active during the construction of the Palace of the Republic. The program utilized shortwave number stations to communicate with deep cover assets. It tracked the black market economy to identify corruptible officials. AECAGE utilized dead drops in the Tiergarten for data exchange. The program identified the secret stay-behind, stay-at-home units of the Stasi. It utilized voice stress analysis on intercepted phone calls to detect lies. AECAGE allowed for the mirroring of Stasi personnel files. The system utilized invisible ink technologies that only reacted to specific light frequencies. It reduced the time to verify a defector's story by 40%. AECAGE was utilized by the Office of Soviet Affairs. The program experimented with subliminal messaging in Western radio broadcast. It utilized natural language processing to analyze the tone of East German newspapers. AECAGE documented the psychological profiles of the Stasi leadership. The system utilized remote audio spying through window vibrations. AECAGE was integrated into the COINTEL exchange with West German intelligence. The pods of data collected were used to bypass Stasi border checkpoints. The project used acoustic shielding in safe houses to prevent laser microphone eavesdropping. AECAGE identified the psychological signature of interrogators to prepare assets for questioning. The program utilized fake identities backed by full verifiable East German histories. It tracked the paper trails of secret Stasi funding through Swiss accounts. AECAGE utilized human intelligence to verify the location of secret bunkers. The software, primitive at the time, mapped family tree connections of high-ranking officers. It identified double agents working within the West German government. AECAGE utilized specialized photography to capture documents from 50 yards away. The program used psychological pressure to force Stasi officers to provide intel in exchange for family safety. It identified the Stasi's secret torture chambers in Hohenschönhausen. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. It's Hohenschönhausen, and there's an accent aigu over the second O. AECAGE utilized radiometric analysis to find hidden communication wires in concrete. The project mapped the underground tunnel system used by spies in Berlin. It utilized graphology, handwriting analysis, to identify the authors of anonymous threats. AECAGE documented the success rate of different types of psychological manipulation. The program utilized diversionary tactics to draw Stasi resources away from real assets. It identified the logic flaws in the Stasi's centralized computer systems. AECAGE utilized social engineering to place assets in clerical positions within the HVA. The system tracked travel patterns of officials to predict high-level meetings. It identified the chemical markers used by the Stasi to mark dangerous books. AECAGE utilized bait documents to find leakers within CIA ranks. The program identified the hidden frequencies used by Stasi walkie-talkies. It utilized behavioral modeling to predict when an informant was about to confess. AECAGE mapped the signal intelligence towers in the Harz Mountains. The system identified vulnerable communications in the East German Postal Service. It utilized fake news planted in local tabloids to create internal Stasi friction. AECAGE tracked weaponized diseases being studied in East German labs. The program utilized heat maps of building activity to find secret meeting rooms. It identified sleep patterns of guards to plan extractions. AECAGE was the primary tool for the forensic deconstruction of the Stasi after the wall fell. A quote from a declassified internal memo from the Berlin station chief, but it doesn't say his name. The goal is to turn the atmosphere of suspicion into a weapon against the state itself. A declassified briefing from the Directorate of Operations. We aren't just recruiting spies, we are recruiting the very architects of the repression. A quote from a declassified operational report on AECAGE infiltration. In the GDR, the shortest distance between two people is a third person listening. And this one is from a declassified technical journal of Soviet bloc operations. The Stasi's greatest strength, its ubiquity, is also its most exploitable vulnerability. This one's from a declassified psychological warfare directive. We must dismantle the individual's trust in the state by showing them the state has no trust in them. This one's from a declassified internal policy assessment on East German intelligence. Infiltration of the HVA is the only path to blinding the Soviet eye in Europe. And then there's this declassified CIA analysis of Stasi operational methods. The decomposition of the target is not an end, but a means to structural collapse, end quote. Within the final evaluation of AECAGE, the section regarding direct psychological influence operations is blacked out for nearly 52 pages. These redactions are enforced under Exemption B1 for national security. I suspect these pages detail the agency's active use of Zersetzung, Zersetzung, the very same psychological deconstruction techniques used by the Stasi against East German officials. I also think the redacted portions cover chemical sabotage, the use of low-dose hallucinogens or depressants introduced into the water supplies of Stasi barracks to induce paranoia. Most significantly, the redactions likely hide the high-level asset list, the names of individuals who reached the very top of the East German government and were never exposed, even after the archives were opened. And I'm not the only one with theories. When a state is built on secrets, the truth becomes a labyrinth. For instance, there's the total control speculation. It's a persistent theory that claims the CIA didn't just infiltrate the Stasi, but actually ran several departments from the late 70s onwards, using them to eliminate Soviet loyalists. Then there's the psychotronic theory. Some believe AECAGE involved the testing of infrasonic weapons designed to cause feelings of dread and anxiety in large crowds during East German state rallies. Then there's the mere archive connection. Fringe speculators believe the CIA has a complete copy of the Stasi archives that includes the files that East Germans managed to shred in 1989, containing the secrets of Western politicians. And then there's the Manchurian theory. Some suggest that AECAGE successfully programmed several high-ranking East German defectors who were then used to influence West German policy after the reunification. Was AECAGE a success? Tactically, it was a bureaucratic assassination. By the mid-1980s, AECAGE had successfully turned the Stasi's own paranoia into a paralyzing force. It provided a live feed into the decision-making process of the East German leadership. It allowed the agency to identify double agents almost as soon as they were recruited by the East. It enabled the safe passage of hundreds of high-value defectors and provided the West with the source code of Soviet bloc espionage. It turned the glass curtain from a shield for the East into a magnifying glass for the West, proving that no security apparatus is too big to be turned against itself. Beyond the immediate intelligence wins, AECAGE's tactical brilliance lay in its silent disruption. The agency didn't just steal information, it injected subtle errors into Stasi surveillance logs, making loyal officers appear suspect and creating a feedback loop of incompetence. This tactical manipulation meant that by the time the wall was physically threatened, the security apparatus was already mentally broken, unable to trust its own data or its own officers. This was tactical warfare at its most elegant, winning the battle without firing a single shot, but rather by ensuring the enemy's own finger was trembling on the trigger of suspicion. By flooding the system with synthesized dissent, the agency essentially forced the Stasi into a state of tactical autoimmune disease, where the organ designed to protect the state began to consume its own healthy tissue. This tactical oversaturation made it impossible for the East German leadership to distinguish between genuine internal threats and CIA-manufactured phantoms, leading to a total collapse of tactical command during critical moments of the 1989 protest. Strategically, it won the war of the mind. It allowed the U.S. to move from defense to subversion. It proved that the inherent flaws of totalitarian states, fear and lack of trust, could be leveraged to bring about its collapse. This created a strategic vacuum of loyalty where Stasi officers began to wonder if their own superiors were CIA assets. Dun, 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 dun. This internal friction slowed the GDR's response at the protest of 1989, as the security forces were too busy watching each other to effectively stop the people. AECAGE ensured that when the wall fell, the transition was far less violent than it could have been, as the teeth of the Stasi had already been filed down from within. The operation served as a proof of concept for the collapse from within doctrine that would define Western strategy during the final years of the Cold War. It demonstrated that human intelligence, when paired with sophisticated psychological modeling, could dissolve a superpower's satellite state more effectively than a nuclear arsenal. By the time the reunification of Germany occurred, the strategic foundation laid by AECAGE allowed for the rapid absorption of East German military and intelligence assets, as the agency already knew who was salvageable and who was a threat. It wasn't just about winning a conflict, it was about strategically pre-shaping the world that would exist after the curtain was finally drawn back. This foresight transformed the reunification from a potential intelligence nightmare into a controlled demolition. By strategically hollowing out the ideological core of the Stasi leadership, AECAGE ensured that the sword and the shield of the party wouldn't just break, it would simply lose the will to strike. A strategic victory that saved countless lives and permanently altered the map of Europe. As far as operational and technological breakthroughs go, AECAGE led to quite a few, such as social network behavioral analysis, which was perfected to map the influence within a closed society. Humanity uses this today to identify the spread of epidemic disease and to target public health interventions. The military applies it to human terrain mapping and counterinsurgency, understanding local power structures to avoid conflict. For the intelligence community, it is the bedrock of targeting, allowing for the identification of key influencers and hostile organizations by mapping their social and professional ties to predict their next move. Psychological resilience profiling was developed to find the breaking point of individuals in high-stress environments. Humanity utilizes this breakthrough in high-performance sports and space exploration to ensure teams can withstand extreme pressure. The military uses it to screen pilots and special operators for mental durability. Within the intelligence world, it is used to vulnerability check their own officers and to identify which foreign targets are most likely to defect or crack under interrogation based on their deep-seated psychological needs. Non-kinetic counter-surveillance was refined to allow assets to operate in total surveillance zones without being detected. For humanity, this has evolved into data privacy tools and encrypted messaging that protects journalists in war zones. The military utilizes these techniques for signature management, allowing troops to move in the digital age without leaving a thermal or electronic trace. For the intelligence community, it allows for the extraction of assets from high-threat environments by manipulating the very security cameras and logs meant to catch them, creating a digital blind spot on demand. and structural deception modeling. It was created to understand how an entire organization can be fed false information to reveal its internal leaks. Humanity uses this today in cybersecurity honeypots to lure hackers away from the sensitive data. The military uses it for operational security, to hide the true intent of a maneuver. For the intelligence community, it enables disinformation campaigns that can lead an adversary to believe a coup is imminent or a weapon is non-functional, causing them to waste billions in resources chasing phantoms. We live in a world where data is the new air, and AECAGE was the moment we realized that data can be poison. It was a project that turned the most feared secret police in history into a tool of their own destruction. The reality of AECAGE is that it redefined national security from the defense of borders to the defense of the psyche. It proved that in the age of information, the most dangerous enemy is the one that makes you doubt your own shadow. This project established the precedent for the ultimate weapon isn't a bomb, but a well-placed lie in a room full of suspicious people. The most profound realization of the AECAGE operation is that the glass curtain was never just a physical barrier, but a state of mind. We often think of espionage as a search for facts, but here it was a search for the absence of trust. The agency didn't just steal secrets. They weaponized the silence between neighbors and the fear in a lover's eyes. This wasn't just a mission. It was a psychological terraforming of East Germany, turning the soil of a totalitarian state into something that could no longer support the weight of its own lies. It serves as a stark reminder that once the social fabric of a nation is unraveled by mutual suspicion, the resulting hole is large enough for an entire empire to fall through without making a sound. Beyond the historical artifacts and the Cold War lore, AECAGE exists today as a digital ghost. It transitioned from paper files in East Berlin to the invisible algorithms that shape our reality. We have moved from a world where 1 person in 10 was an informant to a world where every device in our pocket is a potential witness. The psychological decomposition that once took months of manual surveillance now happens in milliseconds through targeted feeds. The true legacy of the glass curtain is the unsettling truth that the wall didn't disappear. It simply became transparent, and we are still the ones being watched. But the most haunting legacy of the glass curtain is the realization that the techniques of decomposition didn't disappear when the wall came down. They just went digital. In a world of algorithms and echo chambers, we are all being decomposed to some degree. AECAGE reminds us that when trust is destroyed, the cage is complete. The hunt for the truth in the shadows of East Berlin may be over, but the war for our minds has only just begun. In a room of spies, the one who speaks the truth is the most suspicious. A secret is only a weapon as long as you are the only one who knows it. Paranoia is the ultimate tax on an organization's efficiency. And remember, behind the glass curtain, everyone is a reflection of someone else. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine KU LARC, the covert support for Kurdish factions in their long, bloody struggle against regional adversaries. We'll look at the mountain guerrillas, the shifting alliances of the Middle East, and the reality of a war where the maps are written in blood. Join us next time for The Shadow of the Peak. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.